Welcome to A Chapter in 10. This is a video series where I take a full chapter of the Bible and break it down in 10 minutes or less. If you are new here, my name is Paul. I'm working on my PhD at Yale University. The chapter for today is Ecclesiastes chapter 3. In the last episode, we saw how chapter 1 sets the entire book up with the word hevel, which means something like vapor or breath or fleetingness. Chapter 3 here takes up the same idea and marks it out clearly by focusing on the theme of time. Before I get ahead of myself, I like to always begin with the question, what kind of a text is this? Ecclesiastes is part of what we call wisdom literature, a set of books in the Old Testament that ask the big questions about life. Questions of work, joy, suffering, death, and meaning, similar to the books of Job and Proverbs. Chapter 3 in particular is a deep dive on life's seasons. Verses 2 through 8, as you see, notes that life moves in time-ordered patterns that we all uncontrollably and unavoidably will face. He says, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to laugh, a time to seek, a time to lose, and it goes on and on and on. Now, at first glance, this first half of the passage seems somewhat comforting, and understandably so, because it seems to promise a certain balance for life's difficulties, that for every hardship, relief will follow. For every season of grief, joy will come and cancel it out. But when we sit with chapter 3 a little bit more and consider the broader logic of the entire book of Ecclesiastes, it certainly is much more complex than that. And while I think that there is some comfort in his observations of life's sequence, I don't think the point is that life always balances itself out. Instead, the core issue is that life unfolds in seasons that we cannot control. The key word for me is control. We don't choose our birth, and we don't set the hour of our death. In fact, life swings between extreme opposites. There's building and tearing down. There's mourning and dancing. There's silence and speech. And we are caught in that swing without the power to master it or to stop it. That's the observation that he is making in this chapter. So if there is any comfort at all, I think it is one of honesty. And as we have seen so far in chapter 1, Ecclesiastes does not sugarcoat the reality of his observations at all. He names them very bluntly. And it is in that blunt honesty that we are freed from the illusion that we should be in control. And so for me, the comfort lies in accepting that life comes as it comes, and in learning to receive each season, even the hard ones, as part of the strange, uncontrollable rhythm of being human. In verse 9, he returns to the same question that runs through the entire book. What gain have the workers from their toil? In other words, what lasting profit comes from all our effort? If life keeps moving in circles, there's birth and death, planting and uprooting, mourning and dancing, then what do we actually hold in our hands when it's all said and done? His answer is the same as before. Nothing. The passing of time swallows everything and there's nothing left. But then he adds in verse 10, I have seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. Now, the phrase business that God has given is important, right? It suggests that what humans experience is not random, but something that is assigned. By who? By God. Notice that there is a hint of blame in this phrase. The exhausting preoccupation with time's cycle is, after all, not something humans invented for themselves. It is God's design. That's how God made it to be. Yet, in verse 13, if you skip ahead, introduces a surprising twist. It says, it is God's gift that all should eat and drink and take pleasure in all of their toil. Notice how the same word toil now shifts its meaning. Earlier, toil felt like weariness and futility, but now it is the source of joy. Essentially, human life is filled with labor and business, yet with the same burden, God offers joy. That's a really interesting paradox for toil to be both a burden and a gift. Now, on the subject of paradoxes, let's go back to verse 11. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity into their hearts, yet they cannot find out what God has done from beginning to end. You see what I see? On one side, he has made everything beautiful in its time, affirming that every season, whether joyful or bitter, belongs within a larger plan that is somehow fitting. Right? Note that beauty here doesn't mean pleasant, aesthetics or something that looks nice, but something that is appropriate, something that fits. It means that each moment has its place in this grand design we call life. Yet in the same breath, the verse unsettles this idea. He has also set eternity in their heart, he says, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. He's saying in a nutshell that we are wired to yearn for the whole picture, to experience the eternal pattern behind this fleeting moment. But our vision is cut off. This double movement of our awareness of something vast, yet our inability to comprehend it at the same time, is precisely the paradox I'm referring to. And I think the wisdom again here is not in resolving the tension at all, if it is resolvable, but learning to live with the tension and to live within it. In verses 12 through 13, it reads almost like a sigh. After wrestling with all the paradoxes of life in verses 9 through 12. Remember that until this point, he has circled through questions of gain, God's design of life's business, the paradox of beauty and eternity, and then he lands here in verse 13. I know that there is nothing better than for them to be happy and enjoy themselves as long as they live. Moreover, it is God's gift that all should eat and drink and take pleasure in all of their toil. I think this is a kind of a response to everything that has been said so far. If life's cycles cannot be broken, if eternity remains beyond our grasp, then what is left is to take daily joys as gift, however small, and to embrace toil as delight given by God. This idea is certainly not new in this chapter. We saw it in chapter 1, and I think he's going to return again to it in chapter 5 and in chapter 9. As you continue reading throughout the end of the chapter here in 3, we see that the pleasure and joy, as has been introduced, they are not a distraction from the reality that life is tough and life is meaningless, but it is a way of living faithfully inside the toughness and the meaninglessness of life. Notice how in verse 14, God's work endures. And in verse 15 and 19, human striving weakens. And in 16, justice is distorted. And in 18 to 21, our mortality is against all of us as humans. We're going to face death. Against all these rather depressing realities, joy becomes the means to which we receive and live life as a gift. So, what is chapter 3 of Ecclesiastes about? I think it's about how life moves in seasons that we cannot control, and how death and injustice are real, and yet the best way to live is to receive joy as God's gift in the middle of everything that happens to us. Thank you for watching, and I hope you stay and you share and you like and you subscribe. Peace out.